Welcome to the Baffled podcast, where we talk about firearms, engineering, manufacturing, business, and just about anything else that makes us stop and ask, wait, how does that actually work?
I'm Megan Roybal.
And I'm Matt Roybal. Together, we're the founders of Ridgeline Suppressors. And every week, we're pulling back the curtain on what it takes to design, build, and innovate in an often misunderstood industry.
Some episodes will geek out over suppressor design, metallurgy, machining, ballistics, and the science of shooting.
Other days, we'll talk about running a manufacturing company, entrepreneurship, leadership, raising a family while building a business, and lessons we've learned often the hard way.
And every now and then, we'll wander completely off topic because that's usually where the most interesting conversations happen.
But one thing you can count on, we're going to ask lots of questions. Sometimes we'll have the answers.
And sometimes we'll leave more baffled than when we started.
Speaking of baffled,
every episode starts the same way. One of us brings a fact, story, or question the other hasn't heard before. No prep, no Googling, just a chance to see if we can step each other and maybe learn a little something along the way.
Welcome to Baffled. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3 of the Baffled podcast. Unfortunately for this episode, Megan was doing Megan things, so she's not here, wasn't able to come record with us. But today we have a special guest on the podcast, and actually he's our honored and our first guest on the podcast outside of Megan and I. And so we've got Mr. Don Fritz from Fritz Precision.
Howdy. Yep. My name is Don Fritz, Fritz Precision Shooting. I actually just finished up a class a couple hours ago and trying to get my stuff together, but I appreciate you bringing me on. This is fun stuff, man. I like sharing the knowledge. That's why I do this. Been a lifetime shooter, and now I'm saying this on the interwebs, but I'm a math geek, and a lot of shooting is kind of this like mysterious math stuff, and it's really a lot easier than people think. And my superpower has been, for many, many years of training people, is how to translate something that was, let's call it seemingly difficult, and make it simpler. So there's so many folks that come out and train are like, what? Seriously, it's that easy? Yeah, it really is. You know, God's honest truth, the hardest thing is figuring out your wind speed.
Yeah.
Outside of that, the rest of it's gravity, man. It's super easy, and it's been an absolute blessing. You know, you hear the old adage of like, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And man, I tell you, that is 100% true. The actual training portion, I hate to call it work. Hanging out with like-minded folks, passing on a skill that very few people know. I guess where the work comes in is really like the range maintenance, the prep, you know, some of the curriculum, you know, whether it's like some of my SWAT sniper stuff or level 2 or level 3 classes. And other than that, it's hanging out with cool people and shooting guns.
Cool. Yeah. So Don and I, we chat now and then on the phone, and we're always getting into these conversations about shooting and all this stuff, right? And so I was like, Don, we just got to do this on a podcast, and so here we are doing it, and that way you guys could kind of get to hear some of the cool stuff. Like he says, he's a wealth of knowledge, and he's really good at explaining it, which I will say is not my strong point at all. I'm more of here's the technical nerdy stuff, and if you get it, great. If not, then we need people like Don to help explain it. So really glad to have him here. So in honor of Megan being gone, she'll be upset at us, Don, if we don't do her favorite part of the podcast, which is the baffled fact of the episode, because it is the Baffled podcast after all. So
no pun intended, right? Baffled.
Yeah, no pun intended. So my baffled fact is that the metal gallium has such a low melting point that it'll melt in your hand. So it's almost like wax, but it's a metal, and so it's a really cool stuff. But it's also not as toxic as like liquid mercury, right? So mercury obviously really bad for you, but gallium, and it's used in all sorts of things. It's in this computer right here. It's in all kinds of chips and stuff. So really cool metal.
I did not know that. You could literally be making this up. But no, you're not.
I
I
made
know you're not.
maybe some of it I try to make up, but for the most part, I'd say like we're like at least 98, 99%
We're in there.
back.
Uh, Statistics on BS, but no,
Yeah.
no, that's crazy. Gallium. I'm gonna have to Google that. That's kind of cool. I can throw one out there.
All right, let's see what you got.
The largest lizard in the world is found on Indonesia, and it's the Komodo dragon. It's a
Okay.
it's a monitor lizard. Yep.
That's just a monitor lizard? It's just
Yeah, and in fact, they weren't truly like documented until around 1908, which I think is interesting because how does it take that long to find the biggest lizard in the world that can weigh like 200 pounds?
So these are the dudes who's I think if I'm thinking about the right lizard, I watched a documentary. Like they're the ones whose saliva has like
Yes.
slow acting poison, right? They just bite, they'll
Yep.
bite like a buffalo and follow it around for days till
And
it dies.
track it till it dies.
Yeah, that's pretty
So it's
brutal.
it's actually a bacteria, not a venom.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes. So it's just
Different than the Gila monster and the Mexican bearded lizard, which are actually venomous.
all right. Well, you know what? You're already overachieving, Don. So you gave us like three baffled facts right there. So um, awesome. So as Don kind of alluded to, given his background in precision long range shooting, and he does a lot of training. I mean, I think he's doing at least like one course a week, if not more. It seems like every weekend that I talk to him, he's got a course going on.
Yep.
And so we wanted to do this podcast and just kind of talk about just really, it's just going to be a conversation of Don and I talking about what precision shooting means to us and our experience with it. I come from a very, very different background in terms of precision shooting. You might say that I just kind of figured it out on my own, right? I haven't had any formal training, but I did grow up in the mountains of northern New Mexico where we do long range shooting, we do a ton of hunting, and kind of just learning and figuring stuff out from as we go, you know. So I think a lot of the stuff that I've talked to Don about in terms of how he thinks about things, we think about very similarly, and it just really works. So um, that being said, one of the aspects that I really like to talk about, because when you get into long range precision shooting, essentially the sky is the limit when it comes to gear, and I think that's maybe is the first thing that comes to people's mind is, well, I need a rifle that has like this and this, or they don't even, may not even know, but they have to start thinking about like what needs to be on a rifle. And honestly, like I've taken really long shots with very high end precision built rifles that are designed for that, and I've taken long range shots with my dad's Winchester Model 70. There's a 270 from 1977 with a walnut stock on it and a small barrel, you know. So it's
Yeah.
like, which one is easier to hit with? Obviously, the one that's purpose built for that. But could you do it with either, with the right fundamentals? I think that there's some argument for both, right? And so, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. When people ask, hey, first of all, what is long range? And I think there's something that's quantifiable within the individual's perspective. So when we talk about long range, really it's kind of defined as anything outside of 300 yards is kind of defined as long range. We get out past like certain ranges past 1,000 and it's labeled ELR, extreme long range. But really it's, if someone asks, hey, what rifle should I get? What's your intended use? Oh, I want to shoot like 800 yards. Okay, cool. Are you going to hunt with it? Right? So everything's purpose driven. Everything is designed for an intended use. And one of the things that happens here is I get folks that say, hey, I want to come out and take this course, but I want to run my rifle. And more often than not, when they have their rifle system, it's because I provide rifles, and it's a lightweight Magnum caliber hunting rifle, which is, most of them are actually really nice rifle systems, but they're not built for what we're going to do and send 200 rounds downrange over 2 days and learn how to be your own spotter, manage the recoil impulse, and do those things. So digressing to what's the intended use, that's not the right tool for that job. So if I'm going to build, like, let's call it a long range hunting rifle, it's going to be, for me, it's not going to be a 6-pound something. It's probably going to be 11 or 12 pounds, so I can drive it, so I can manage recoil impulse. But I'm not going to shoot 12, 13, 1400 yards with it. I'm going to keep it within certain ethical distances. But if I'm going to go shooting at the range and do long range shooting, my closest target on my range is 415 yards. I'm going to run something that is built with an Arca rail or Picatinny. It can rest on a support bag. It has a barricade stop. All the fun, cool tools to make long range shooting easier. Can I do it with a hunting rifle? Absolutely. It's just not as easy. So that's why I asked, what's the intended purpose, right? So when someone asks, it's like, I've got to find out where they come from, what they want to get out of my course. I would say over half the people that take a course don't hunt. They're either dabbling and want to do competition shooting or PRS, just want to put the skill in their toolbox. They just think it's something really cool they want to try and do, or they've been on the self-discovery mode for a long time, whether they're looking at videos on Instagram, YouTube, and learning tidbits here and there, and actually want some formal training to hone their skills. All those different demographics, if you will, really have the same goal in mind. We want to learn how to hit a target. But what target are we hitting? Do I want to shoot a deer at 300 yards, or do I want to hit a piece of steel at 11 or 1200 yards?
Right.
You follow me?
Yeah, and there's just like, so there's so much to, in my mind anyway, there's so much to unpack in like what that whole little initial phase that you just talked about of like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? Why? It's always the why, right? And everything at some level has to be somewhat purpose built. And so when it comes to like our suppressors, that's what I've done, right? I built certain models that are specific for certain applications, like you talk about, if it's hunting, if it's long range precision shooting, is it on an AR, right? So those are some of the like different applications, right? And there's just so many things there. And one of the things I will say is, like you say, a lot of your shooters that are coming to take your course are maybe not really necessarily experienced shooters, and they're not necessarily hunters. They're just wanting to investigate and get into it. I will say that like long range precision shooting is a sport. It's very much a mental game as much as it is a skill game. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about it. You have to have those fundamentals. You have to have the gear at some level, you know what I mean? But like that focus of kind of just taking the world out, and you're just focusing on this, on hitting this target at X range, you know what I mean? And all of the things that go from when you initially get on target to when you pull that trigger and that shot follow through. And so it's very much a mental game for me anyways, and I really enjoy that because it gives me something to get away from the world, right? And that's the same reason that I enjoy hunting so much. I grew up doing it, but it gives you a purpose mission, right? And so like for those 5 days that you're out on a hunt, like you've prepped everything such that like you are out there with one goal in mind. You wait from the moment you wake up to, most of us can't sleep at night, and we
Right.
too, and then we wake up in the morning and we kind of hit it, you know what I mean? And that's our goal, is to find that animal and spend the time out there, and it kind of takes away this chaos and this of the world that we have, you know. So that's one of the things that I really enjoy about this sport, about shooting and about hunting, is it gives your mind that break, you know, and kind of takes everything away. But when it comes to, so what would you say in your experience with shooting and with students, is kind of, what is the, so I'm trying to figure out how I phrase this. So I'm a hunter, right? I grew up and I'm just the hunter who grew up with the Remington 700s and the Winchester Model 70s
Hmm.
and the Bergara stuff or whatever it is now modern, you know? So what would you say to me when I come to you and say, so I want to be able to shoot, let's say the 800 yards and in, and my goal is for a hunting application. What is the number one thing in terms of gear that you would say makes the biggest difference on that rifle setup that's going to make me that's going to improve my shooting?
Okay. So outside of the skill, I'm
Correct.
just looking at
Yeah, we're going to talk about I
Yep.
know skill is very important, but we're going to talk about that. I'm going to just bear with me, Don. I know
Yeah.
that's
So separating skill, environment, wind, all that,
yep,
to the system itself,
right.
I would say kinetic energy. So what caliber? So once we start getting into that 1 second time of flight, when the bullet slows down, how much energy does it have to make an ethical kill? Having that 12 to 1400 foot-pounds of kinetic energy is going to determine at that distance what caliber you're going to select. So we start with caliber for one, and then we start going rifle system from there, barrel length, weight, type of trigger, optic, all that stuff from there. But for one, it is our duty as a hunter, because we are taking a life for our reason, whether it's trophy, the meat, the thrill of the hunt, everything that goes with it, because there's so much anticipation. It's one shot. It's your cold bore shot. All the fun stuff that happens is we need to ensure that we're getting that job done, so nothing suffers, and that we make an ethical kill and don't just wound something. So right off the bat, it's going to be caliber selection, so we have enough kinetic energy to make that happen.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you, and that's a big thing that I've seen in with some of these modern cartridges that have come out and that have been pushed from. I don't know the history of them, but like why they got pushed, I think it has to do with a lot of like the competition style shooting, and they don't necessarily make. They're very accurate cartridges, but they don't necessarily make a great hunting round because of all the
Right.
things that you just said. You need that energy at the end of the day, and you can get that energy from either mass or velocity or both, right? And
Correct.
so um, you that's where you get into like your Magnum hunting cartridges, which if you're talking old stuff, it's the 300 Win Mag, it's the 7 Rem mags, it's the 300 Rum, the Remington Ultra mags, and then when you essentially the equivalent of the three of those, the new modern cartridges is the 7 PRC, the 300 PRC, and so those cartridges are designed for putting the energy downrange and having enough mass behind the bullets to actually ethically take an animal. And
Right.
so you there is so much that we could get into in terms of ballistics, both for hunting and terminal ballistics are an incredibly important aspect of that as well, you know. And so
Yeah.
for me, when I transitioned from like the old school hunting rifles and once we started shooting more and shooting more long range, um, so there were two things in terms of gear that made a huge difference for me, and that was a stock that fit correctly, and so a stock that had an adjustable cheek rest, and then the optic. Like,
Yep.
so if you took your standard, just nothing fancy, like your grandpa's gun, essentially, bolt action
One
gun,
size fits all.
and yeah, and put those two things on it, a good optic, and it doesn't need to be I'm not talking a $4,000 optic. I'm talking just something that you can see clearly through out to out to that 800-yard range, right? And that tracks.
Yeah.
Like nothing crazy there. But that and having the cheek rest and stock that fits. And when I've worked with new shooters or young shooters, I've got kids and have been teaching them how to shoot. Those two things seem to be like the number one things that once you get those adjusted right, it's like night and day. So
Yeah.
here's a story for you, Don, that happened with my son. So my son's 5, and I'm a right-handed shooter, and we were out shooting a 223 bolt gun at the range, and we had still at 200 yards. And so I set him up prone behind this gun and put him behind it right-handed, and he is just fighting it. Like, could not find the scope, and I'm sure you've seen this with a lot of new shooters. Like, he just couldn't find that clear view
Can't see
the
through it.
scope. Yeah, and he's just trying to fight it, and I adjusted his length of pull. We were on a chassis, so I had a length of pull and cheek adjustment. I got it right. He's still just fighting it. And what I noticed is he kept fighting and trying to put his left eye into the scope. I was like, oh, I bet this kid's left eye dominant.
Left
I
eye
don't know.
dominant.
I don't know how that happened because he's my son, but so I moved him over to the left, to his left eye, and it was like instantaneous. He just like, oh, there's the still. He's like, oh, I see it, Dad. And he got on it immediately, and then I had that cheek rest just right for him where, so when he dropped in and dropped his cheek on it, he was aligned. And after that, that kid did not miss the rest of the day. 200 yards, 300 yards still, and was just drilling him. And it was with the little 223 bolt gun. But that's what I mean, and like just like that basic setup. And I know that there's so many things in terms of skill level and training that go into the fundamentals. But to me, those two things, having a decent scope with a good eye relief and a good eye box on it, and having that length of pull and cheek rest adjustable, so that way you can comfortably and can get on the rifle, made a huge difference for shooters that I've worked with, from myself to kids and people I've taught how to shoot.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is with kids, if you ask them, are you left eye or right eye dominant? They have no idea what you're talking about, right?
No.
And the struggle
and especially
is,
at 5, right? They don't like.
Yeah.
I couldn't even, because I mean, one of the things that I was taught was to do like the make a triangle, pick something, pull it to your eye, and like he couldn't even do that, right? He wasn't, and so
right? It's like, do
but,
what?
yeah, but he was able to get on it, and once I figured that out, and so it makes a big difference, right? And so I'm not saying, and I am definitely not a gear guy. I'm not like hey, you have to buy this piece of gear in order to shoot good. I'm actually the opposite of that. But in terms of just like fundamentals of, these are some of the very basic things for a new shooter or a shooter who's wanting to investigate this, because there's so much noise out there, in my opinion, that like there's just like,
There's
I mean,
too
you watch a YouTube video, you watch this, and every one of them is telling you, oh, you need this chassis, you need this scope, you need this bipod, you need these bags, you need all of this stuff. And I think what I'm trying to do is how do you kind of filter out some of that noise and get to the point of what are some of the most critical things, and exactly what you brought up earlier is like, what is the fundamental purpose of what you're trying to do? And that's going to drive a lot of it. But I think regardless of what you're trying to do, to me, the most critical thing is the optic, your length of pull, and that cheek height. Getting those things right is going to give you a huge advantage. And then the rest comes into those fundamentals of how you drive.
Oh, 100%. One of the students that just left, he's 21 years old, super smart guy. We're at the range. I was like, hey, do you have a notepad? He's like, I got sticky notes in my pocket. He was ready. Man, we did some range estimation, milling targets, all that fun stuff. But, it was neat to have the conversation with him because he's newer to it. And he was saying that this 2 people he knows are long range shooters, allegedly. And they're giving them information, and I wasn't there to argue and say, hey, their info was bogus, but he put it well when he said, I don't know this stuff. They seem to, so they're telling me this, and therefore I listen, right? And I think a lot of people are in that same boat, right? We don't have any like personal validation through experience, so we're looking to those who probably or seemingly know more and take this advice. And how do you know if it's BS or not? And you don't, you really don't. And that's, not just because I train people in the sport of long range shooting, but whether it's me or anywhere else, I mean, take some training, man. I mean, you gotta take driver's ed to drive a car, right? That's a trained professional to show you the fundamentals of how to operate the vehicle. There's, we can't just hand someone a gun and say, go out and kill something or go out and shoot. We train them and show them how to use this, right? Safety, the 3 or 4 golden rules of firearm safety, right? Keep it pointed in a safe direction, finger off the trigger, all those things. And we just kind of stop there in the firearms world and expect for other people to teach us this stuff. And there's a lot of stuff out there that maybe it's, I don't want to call it antiquated, but maybe not the best info out there. And I'm not here to throw stones at anyone at all, but a lot of things have changed with the gadgets, the gear, the modern technology. But you can still take someone who is a very accomplished shooter and hand them what they might think of as just like a substandard box brand gun, give them decent ammunition with low SDs, we'll talk about that in a bit, and a decent optic. And that person with that inexpensive firearm will outperform a mediocre shooter with the best system out there because they don't know how to use it. Mm-hmm. And that's that right there. That's the disconnect. And that's why we're such a gear junkie society of like, what's the next thing that tells me to do the thing? What's the next thing that tells me this? And I've actually started a little self-experiment. There's no like compiled data or spreadsheet on it, but I've just been playing with it. And if someone says, hey, we're shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor and we're shooting 630 yards or 650 or 700 yards, if I tell them dial 11 mils, they would dial 11 mils. Problem with that is that is so far outside the realm of any 6.5 Creedmoor. You're going to be more like 4 something, maybe 5 mils, but they don't know the difference. That's so absurdly wrong that they're looking for at the gadget to give them the right answer. And with the whole garbage in, garbage out, they're just always looking for the answer, and they're not becoming an accomplished marksman. So I always make the comment, like, embrace the technology to learn, but know how to do it without it as well. So that when something arises and it doesn't seem right, look into it and find out why it's not right. And again, another disconnect, right? We rely on the gear, we rely on the next best thing, the coolest thing, the thing that makes it easier. But really it's got to boil down to what can you do fundamentally without all of that stuff, and then build from there.
Right. Yeah, and gear does make your job easier. Having the right tool makes your job easier, for sure. And so that we're definitely not trying to say like, hey, doesn't matter, gear doesn't matter. But I agree with you 100% in the terms of like, you don't know what you don't know, and there's so much information out there on the web that you can. It's hard to decipher when you don't know anything, right? And you've got these experts telling you need this, you need that. And I think that's a big disconnect in the shooting world, not just long precision, but like across the board. Let's get back to the fundamentals. Let's get back to doing a little bit more intuitive research, right? And deciphering but it can be hard, to your point of like, you're brand new into this, you don't know what questions to ask, and you don't have enough experience to filter out what might be total BS, like you're saying, like telling somebody to dope 11 mils and they're going to do it and they're going to shoot 4 feet at the target, right? And so,
You know, I'll open up some of my classes, especially my fundamentals class, and there's this funny meme that I'll just put up there and let people stare at it for a second. And it said, "So I lied on my resume," and it's got this dude with a T-post driver, and he's using it sideways to pound the T-post, right? And it's hilarious, but it makes it easy to segue into like using the tool the wrong way. He's using the right tool for the job, but he's using it wrong. So whether it was on his own accord of this is how I'm going to use this thing, or someone told him that's what you do, he's doing it wrong. And people don't realize with the simplest rifle system, a good caliber, a high efficient bullet, a good trigger, and a good optic, you can do some pretty epic stuff with that. And the other frills and gadgets that go with it just make it easier to hit the middle of the middle. But when we're looking at connecting with a reasonable sized target and learning from there, like being your own spotter and watching that information and good data downrange, man, that's the number one learning tool. That's why I really, really pound on natural point of aim, setting the system up properly, your eye relief, a good trigger press, dispersion, we can talk about that. But if you can see what's going on downrange and know what happened, it's so cool when we're just a few hours in and a shooter, as soon as they pull the trigger and hear them go, oh, they knew right then they weren't going to hit that target.
yeah.
And that's a cool feeling because at that moment they connected and they knew they weren't going to see anything positive because they knew they tanked that shot. And those things, when you can connect that with now learning, right? Good information, this is what's going on downrange, learning, man, you can hit the ground running from there.
Right. So when you say you brought it up multiple times, but you're saying being your own spotter, right? And so typically in long range shooting, and if you watch the movies with a sniper in it, you'll see like two dudes, right? And
Yep.
so and one guy's shooting, the other guy is the spotter, right? And so what I'm trying to do is just what does it mean to be your own spotter?
So I do this fun little thing because years ago, I just really noticed there was a lot of consistency when one person, especially newer shooters, were spotting for someone, and they would all say these different dynamic terms. Oh, that was 6 feet left of the target, or that was 2 feet, that was a foot over the top, that was a foot low, and there's so much interpretation there. So what I started doing after I realized that is I hand everyone in the room a piece of string, and I tell them, hey, and I just pull some number out of my butt, right? I want everyone to show me 14 inches. And as soon as they do that, tell them stop, don't adjust it. And I bust out a tape measure and I go up to each person. And almost never is anyone even close to 14 inches. And of, let's call it 5 students in the room, there are 5 different answers. So I'll ask them, so at this point, if you were going to hold 10 inches over a target, is it your 10 inches, your 10 inches, or your 10 inches? And at that moment, this light bulb goes off that, hey, we actually have a measuring tape in front of our face. We have a reticle. And if we can use that reticle to actually determine the true distance, then that's a game changer. So now if you understand that measuring tool and you can see your miss or your impact, now you can quickly make that decision, make a correction before either wind changes or just quickly make that correction and make a second round impact. That is paramount versus Bubba says another foot, I adjust my foot, which is different than his foot, and I still miss.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and even like at long range, I mean, what is a foot? Like, you know what I mean? So your point of you're absolutely 100% right? But like, what is a foot when you're out there either? And we see that in hunting all the time. Like, aim a foot over its back, and you're like,
right.
What?
Whose foot?
Which is not ideal to do. and again, like that brings you back to if you're trying to build a system that you can start to reach out there a little bit with, a good optic with the right reticle in it is paramount to that, right?
Oh yeah.
And because of those, that's one of the reasons. I mean, the most fundamental is just being able to see. So
Yep.
having good glass, being able to see at those ranges, you start to run into mirage and just the clarity of the glass and the coatings that they put on stuff on these different optics. So
Low
you need
light
to be,
performance or not.
yeah, you need to be able to see, right? And so let's say you can see, well, the next thing you need is for your scope to be able to track. And what I mean by track is when I move it, I'm an MOA guy. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but
I'm
when I move,
bilingual.
we'll go back. We'll really confuse people. And we'll start typing mills and MOAs, and then it'll really go out there.
I have
It's
a
like
buddy that says milliways
MOAs.
because he
There we
shoots
go.
both.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what crashed the shuttle, right?
I'm pretty sure.
Mixing units. So yeah, but being able to track on an optic that if I move it 5 mil or 5 MOA, that optic moves that much, and when I come back to my zero, that optic comes back to that
Yep.
zero.
Return
And
to
so,
zero.
and that's super important both for elevation and windage. And so like I'm a shooter, for better or worse, that like I'll dial elevation, but I rarely dial wind. I almost always hold wind.
Same way.
Yeah, and that's because I shoot typically like in a hunting situation, you're probably not going to dial for wind and you're going to just hold it if you had to, right? And
Yeah.
so I've talked to a lot of competition shooters who will dial their wind as well, and that works for them. But regardless of whether you're just dialing elevation or if you're dialing wind, super important that that scope comes back to zero, that it moves what you moved it, and that it comes back to zero. And and then I think the next thing in my mind is going to be having a reticle that you know how to use. And I think that's what you were talking about just a minute ago in terms of you have a ruler in front of your face.
Yep.
And so whether your scope is in mils or MOA, and if you already know one system or the other, in my mind, they're both the same. It just matters which one you know. You
Yep.
just have to understand what those units are. It's like the difference between inches and millimeters. They're both the same. It's just like I'm a machinist and an engineer in the U.S., so I understand inches. When you start talking millimeters, I'm like having to convert it, translate it in my head, right? And so I
Oh yeah,
naturally,
and I have to do the same thing for students. Is like when
yeah,
we're talking about mils, MOA, they're angular measurements, right? They're not
yep,
necessarily inches, but they still want to know. So I say, hey man, if you're at 1,000 yards, if you're holding a mil off of target, you're holding about 36 inches. And they're like,
So
oh,
what
okay.
is a mill?
So a mil is, so let's digress to an MOA real quick. So
Okay.
360 degrees in a circle,
Yep.
take 1 degree of that, segment it into 60 pieces.
Yep.
That's why they call it a minute.
So it's a minute,
So
right? Yeah.
that's a
Yep.
minute, right? A mil is circle, cut it in half, divide by pi, blah, blah, blah. And creates 3 equal segments. They took one of the segments, chopped it into 1,000 pieces. The nice thing about mils is it's a base 10 math. So it's like money. I can count to 100 by ones, fives, and tens fast. So simple math for simple brain. It's just easier. They both work. They're just an angular measurement. Bullets
Right.
don't fly
Sure.
straight. We're holding an angle because we're compensating for how much drop.
So for all you math guys out there, it's a radian. So a milliradian, which is pi. It's a function of pi, and then the other one is in degrees, minutes, seconds. And so you have in 1 degree there are 60 minutes. It's just like time, and then
Yep.
there are 60 seconds in 1 minute. And so that's the difference between the two systems. They're both angular measurements. It's almost just like the metric and the English system is
Yeah.
what the difference between milliradians or minute of angle, MOA mils is the two that you'll hear the language that you'll hear people talk about it in the industry.
Right. That's why they're like, and I got to tell you, I mean, a lot of people, not only do they not understand, let's call it the math portion of it, they don't understand the features or benefits of it. I've had students show up with really nice rifle systems on chassis, ready to rock and roll, great optics, and I'll look at it and go, oh, cool, this is going to be easier for us because you went with Mills. And they go, huh? Right?
Yeah.
So they didn't know whether they're MOA or Mills. They just bought the optic that they thought was the one that they wanted, which
Yeah.
makes it easier, right? MOA, like I said, I speak both languages. There are certain ballistic techniques that only work in Mills because gravity pulls at 9.81 meters per second squared. Let's call that 98% of time.
Or 32.17 feet per second.
Right? We're only one of 3 nations that uses Imperial, but hey,
I'm again, because of my background in engineering, I cannot think outside of the Imperial system. I just, and so when I translate that to Mills versus MOA, I'm like, all right, MOA is in yards. Well, so here's something that confused me, Don, is
as yards and
yeah,
Mills.
well, no, people will shoot in yards, but they'll use mils. And so, like, if you completely convert it, and I take this argument, and if you're going to do everything in meters, and then you're going to use mils, all right, all that math starts to make sense and becomes super easy.
Right.
But if we're going to talk yards, and then they also use MOA targets. That's a 5 MOA target. That's a 2 MOA, 1 MOA target.
It is, man. But I mean, if you look
So-
industry standard, I mean, people from Sweden, Germany, everywhere else, and the industry standard, it's a sub MOA gun. They don't even speak MOA, but
Right.
it's just become an industry standard term. Oh yeah, it's sub MOA.
Right. Yeah, so that's one of the kind of funny things that I've noticed too. And but all right, here's another like MOA mill debate. that I
Everyone
get a
loves
lot.
this one.
What? Yeah. So by the way, these are all like totally cold guys. I'm just hitting Don with stuff and stuff. What? So which system is a finer gradient?
Oh, stop it. MOA, right? So
It is MOA. Yeah.
quarter of an inch versus 0.36. Yes,
Yeah.
it
So
is fine.
so like to do simple math, right? A quarter of an inch at 100 yards, right? Is the dispersion at that range?
Right. Assuming we're
Other
talking
than
SMOA, not TMOA.
Okay. See, now he's getting really technical on us. But and of a mil, it's about a third of an inch, so 0.33333, right? So there's 4 clicks versus 3 clicks to move us an inch at 100 yards. And so that's one of the things that I run into constantly in this debate. And I'm like you, I think that it just depends on which one you know. I don't care for, I don't want to say like one is better than the other.
No.
It's which one you know and how you've
And
learned it.
one isn't better than the other. One is just easier
Right.
for
And
quick math.
and I think that it depends on who's teaching you and what you've learned. And most trainers are training in mill, right? And so that makes 100% sense. But I've asked, I mean, competition shooters that question, and they'll say mill immediately, and it's like, all right, cool. So,
I ask why though.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, exactly.
gun number is one. Speed drop, gravity ballistics, work in mills. So if I know that, but within my effective window of my bullet efficiency between 300 and 900 yards, it drops 1 mil every 100 yards or 100 meters because you can do it both ways. So if I'm dialed for a specific target and the next target's 150 yards farther, I don't need a firing solution. I can just hold an additional 1.5 mils, 1/10 per 10 yards. So it makes like rapid target engagement, multiple target engagement easier. It's not that you can't convert it. It's
Right.
it's just how does your brain work, right? I always joke around and say 3 + 5 is 8 and 5 + 3 is 8. So is 2 + 6. So how do you get there? Because there are people who speak MOA fast. They're like, hey, yeah, here, I'm holding 2 MOA. I'm like, all right, I'd give it 5/10. Potato, potato. You're right there, you know? So what
Yeah.
works for your brain is really about it.
Right. Yeah. 100%. And that's the same thing with. It's. What I'm trying to get to is like it is fundamentally just a unit. So
That's it.
it's a metric unit versus an English unit. And I use the example of like me being a machinist, and we deal in thousandths of an inch. So I talk thou, 100
Yep.
thou, 200 thou. And so like those are all inches. And when I get a print in the shop that is in millimeters, I'm like converting everything. 25 divided
Right?
by.
Because, yeah,
Yeah.
if you ask most Americans, go, hey, show me with your fingers what 6 millimeters or 6 centimeters is. I don't know. But if you
Yeah.
said, 2 inches, they'd be like, they can get you pretty close, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how we've been brought up. That's how we think. That it's easier to
Right.
see that.
And that's exactly the same argument for mills and MOA. It's how you were trained, and it's kind of what you're trained to think in, and like you're saying you understand mills very well, and you train to that, and that is great. That's the way it should be, right? So this brings us back to like we were just talking on optics, and the reason we got down that rabbit hole of mill versus MOA is because you can buy an optic that is either in mill or MOA, right? And so that's just saying what unit are my graduations, both for my turrets and for the optic, the reticle inside itself. And so tell us a little bit, Don, about like how what do you look for in a reticle? And again, I think this is a well, it depends on what you're trying to do, but
Right.
give
No,
me.
I agree. I agree. So personally, most of the optics that I hunt with don't have a Christmas tree reticle because I'm not engaging multiple targets. I'm not going to do holdover with wind. I typically just run, you know, subtensions on the stadia lines, right? Because I'm going to dial for my elevation and I'm going to hold for wind. I don't need anything else. I want it as clean as I can to see what's going on. If environment changes, I don't have anything skewing that because at that point when I pull the trigger, targets don't care if you miss. So wounding an animal is the last thing I want to do. And I don't need all of those features. I'm not going to mill a target. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I'm not going to run speed drop. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I'm just going to dial my appropriate elevation and trust that dope, and then look at the environment, and then hold for wind, send it, do what I got to do.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, it's going to be personal preference, right? And of course, it's not like everyone has, unlimited funds and can have this gun for the competition, or this optic for the competition rifle, and this one for the hunting one, and this for that. But in a hunting scenario, how far are you shooting? What type of hunting are you doing, and what terrain? Is a lot of, do you need really good low light performance? Because we don't have to spend $4,000 on a hunting optic. You really don't. I mean, you don't need to for long range shooting. I've run some optics that were actually higher end. I'm not going to use the names. And with my binoculars, I could clearly see that animal. As soon as I pulled up, and this is still well within legal shooting light, and when I pulled up that rifle, I could not see it. I
Yeah.
was bummed out because I could see it clear as day through my binos. So I was disappointed with the low light performance. We call it happy hour, especially in the evening or mornings. That first light kind of scenario or last light where there's a lot more movement. That's when a lot of things happen. So I would say something that has good low light performance, a fairly simple reticle. You're going to dial for elevation. You may hold for it too, but I'm going to tell you, human brain works a certain way. We don't like getting too far from our zero, from the center. So when I first start teaching holdovers, and the first thing someone's thinking is like, I'm holding 6 mils over or whatever, right? MOA over my target. And the human brain, unless you do that an awful lot, doesn't like doing that, and it pulls you out of the mindset of the shot. So I tell folks, hey, you're going to dial for elevation, hold for wind, send it, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. And when you're in the moment, especially in hunting, of like you have a you don't have you have a limited time window.
You're on the
Uh,
clock.
you don't have like a perfect, you may not have a perfect shot set up, you know what I mean? Like in terms of like your positioning, you might be kind of a little goofy. And so that's where all of those things like you're talking about really come into play, where if you're dialed and you just know, it's easier to, that's just one less thing you have to think about, right? Because you're already
Yeah.
thinking about all this other stuff that you can't control. And so if you're dialed for it and you just know, put that crosshair right on center. And
Yep.
I've seen that a lot, especially with like new hunters and stuff. Like if you dial for them, and they even ask that when it's kind of far, 400, 500 yard shot, right? They're like, you just put my crosshairs right on the shoulder, just
Yep.
and it's like, yep, just put it right on it, and it's easier, right, for them to hold on that for sure. Um, and so yeah, I agree with that. Like when you're if you're looking at a big game hunting rifle type optic, you don't want all that noise of a Christmas tree in there. It's just more stuff it's more stuff to confuse you in that moment of the
Yep.
shot. But if I'm building like we just recently built a handful of 22 creeds for varmint hunting, for prairie dog hunting, and that one I do like having a full tree on it,
Yep.
because those ones you're sitting on a prairie dog field and you can hold and move, and you're
Take your
not
wind with you. You have
Yep.
subtensions.
Yep. And so it just, again, it just depends, but that type of shooting is also much more like still shooting, right?
Like
Where-
target shooting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
You're not
um,
harvesting those.
no, it is one of my favorite pastimes, I must say, though.
Oh, it's a kick in the pants.
Yeah, it's tons of fun, and we built a couple of 22 creeds that we've been doing different testing and stuff with, and uh, Don knows this. Like I think this might have been one of the first things I told him is like I'm not a Creedmoor fan at all, but that 22 Creedmoor
Yeah.
is pretty cool.
It's a pretty good sized cartridge for pushing a 70, 80 some grain bullet.
Yeah, and
They're
it's
smoking.
and for something like that where it's with the right bullets, it's flat enough that you can almost you're not worried about a bunch of drop on stuff when you're shooting
No.
at a prairie dog that's maybe 200 yards and maybe another one that's out at 5. It's pretty easy to hold and move, and so it's been a great cartridge for that, I will say. So
It is. It
Um,
is.
so one of the we're so what do you think in terms of so we've been talking a lot just kind of about these basics of the rifle and some of this stuff. I mean, what are your thoughts when someone comes to you to ask about what do I need to be doing? And so what I'm trying to get at is what is the first what is the homework that they need to do? What are the prequels that when somebody has these and they come to your course, it's like, oh, that's awesome that you already have, that you kind of already have this, or you know about that. And so what are some of those things?
Man, first and foremost, outside of understanding length of pull or cheek height, right? Like I tell people, like, hey, anyone can jump in my truck and probably drive it down to the mailbox and back. But if you're going to drive it home, you're going to make some adjustments, right? So that's the adjustment end of it. But understanding the optic is by far the most misunderstood part of the rifle system. And it is every class. There's at least 2 people who are like absolutely astonished by the fact they've been doing it wrong the whole time. And the funny thing is, a lot of this information is in the owner's manual, right? Operator's manual.
Who would ever
But I
that?
but I mention that and I say, out of all of you here, who brought their operator's manual to their optic? Nobody. I don't even know where mine's at, right?
Yeah.
So when we start talking about parallax, setting the eyepiece, the diopter for your vision, and I explain that that's your eye prescription, because I watch so many shooters get behind their scope and they start turning that thing to clear up the target. And I'm like, what are you doing? You know? that's the wrong one. You know,
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? So we explain, hey, parallax, because you can't video parallax. So I've got a reticle printed on a piece of Mylar that's 24 by 24, and I'll draw a dot on a whiteboard, and I'll hold that reticle on that dot and say, hey, you're going to shoot at this, you're zeroing your gun, right? Yeah. This is what you're looking for. And I want you to just nod your head, just up and down a little bit. Don't move the rifle, and you'll see this. And I'll slide it up and down. And I'll say, have you seen that? Like, well, yeah, that's parallax. And you will chase that all day. You can't put your eyeball, this lens, and your face in the same spot every single time. We've got to adjust things, the parallax adjustment, until that doesn't move. There's this aha moment. So once we get to the range, we actually, after the classroom portion, and go to zero these things, I'll have that parallax turned up quite a bit so that they can see it. Target's fuzzy, but they can see exaggerated parallax. Can you see that? Yes. So we shoot at these little 3/4 inch red dots. I'll tell them, get on one of those dots, hold her steady. I want you to just nod your head. Can you see that float off of there? Yes. That's parallax. I want you to turn this until parallax stops. Ignore the numbers on the side. I don't care that it says 75, 100, 120. Ignore that. I want you to turn that. The target starts to clear up, and then check it. Now make sure it's not moving within that dot, and turn that until they don't move. And there are so many people who go, I didn't realize that. I didn't know. I just turned that thing, And that's everything we're doing is based off our zero, and everything we're doing is through our optic. So making sure that our zero is actually zero is number one key, right? It can't be 0 plus or minus 1.5 MOA or 0.2 or 0.3. It can't, right? But if you don't do that, you have a few tenths or a couple MOA of all over the place. So there's that one. And then, of course, setting it up so that you can see through the optic without having to make like some physical concessions, right? I don't have to like shove my face down to see the whole thing. So getting our cheek height right. Length of pull, so I don't have to stretch my neck to see into it or do the whole turtleneck to see through it. Get our length of pull right. Now we can drive the gun. No different than adjusting the tilt steering on your car, pedals, mirrors, right? All those things so that you can operate this well, because you need to operate it well. And translating things so people understand what is small at the shooter is huge downrange. Once they have that connection, they realize, man, this 3 or 4 thousandths of movement at the buttstock translates to almost half of an inch at 100 yards. What do you think that translates into at 500 or 600 or 700? So reeling that into the hunter world is, okay, now I've got a good confirmed solid zero. I've got everything set up for me. I can shoot a good small group, 1 inch or less at 100 yards. I'm golden. Okay, now let's do it when you're excited. We've got crappy weather. You're not backyard perfect. What's that group size? What becomes an ethical shot? And right now I'm actually working with another company on, we're looking at building an app that's going to help do that. So induce some of that, let's call it stress, but instead of just zeroing their gun and going, man, I shoot a 1/2 inch group. Good job. No stress. Backyard perfect. Now let's look at your first shot. Now let's look at your first shot prone, and then how about one in a supported kneeling position off of a tripod. Now, what are your first shots? Are we within 1 MOA? Are we 1.5? Are we 2? Right? Are we, in mills, are we a 3/10, 4/10 group? Where are we at? I think by doing this app, this is going to be super cool because we can put some drills together that they can save this data and then overlay them, if you will, and see the progression. But also, now you don't have someone saying, you shouldn't do that. That's not ethical. They can actually measure the performance and know what their limits are based off of their personal performance. And I think that's where we need to go because, like we were talking earlier in this, is there's so much information out there and people don't know what they don't know. And because this person says this, oh, maybe it's valid. Well, maybe it's not. But if it's you measuring your performance, your growth under these conditions, you know what you can or can't do. So I think this is going to be kind of an epic move in the hunting community, and I'm pretty excited for it.
That sounds like that'll be awesome because you're absolutely right, and you don't have if you just don't have that experience, then you just don't have it, right? And so
Yeah.
having these training tools, and the other thing is hunting is has always been popular. It's getting more popular, but it's also getting harder to draw tags, and it's getting harder to draw these really good tags that maybe is a big bull or a sheep hunt or
Yeah.
something like that, right? And so you want to. What I see is a lot of guys are wanting to put their best foot forward. I mean, they are legitimately wanting to know like what is the best thing that I can do to make sure that I harvest an animal and that I harvest it ethically, especially when this might be a once in a lifetime opportunity. But I mean, beyond that, it might be a once in a 5 year, once in a 10 year, once in a 20 year opportunity,
Yeah.
which is like not really that uncommon in hunting, right? I mean, it's not uncommon to only get a good bull tag every 5 or 10 years, or maybe
Right.
once in a lifetime. You know.
And that's the tag, not the opportunity, right?
No, exactly. And then you got to go out and you got to hunt it, and so like all of that stress in that moment when that 380 bull is standing in front of you, 400 class bull, right? All of that stress in that moment, and that's when all of these things that you're talking about and all these things that we're training for come into play, and
Yeah.
you make that shot, right, and you trust your platform, and it all comes together beautifully. And so and it's not impossible. We see it lots of people are doing it, and it works great. And the technology that we have, everything from apps to technology in the industry that are helping us to shoot better with the platform, the gun, the ballistic. So one of the things we're already kind of running for a while here, and so but I think we're gonna just have to have you on again, Don, and we're gonna have to talk more about ballistics, which
Yeah.
we really didn't get to talk at all, and because that is one of the topics that I really like to get into,
Me too.
and it's a really fun topic. But I think this was a really good it was really good conversation to have with you in terms of just like kind of the general, very high level stuff that we're looking for, and how to uh, be your own spotter, not only when you're shooting, but when you're learning this stuff, and to learn how
Yeah.
to filter out information essentially and apply it to whatever it is that you're trying to do. I think super important.
No, and I agree, and I'll throw this in there. I go to a lot of like the hunt expos and talk to a lot of folks, and I'll do podcasts or stay at a booth or something for a while. But talking to some of these folks who are getting a $100,000 sheep hunt, a $30,000 moose hunt, a lot of these hunts, right? They've invested quite a bit, and they've got phenomenal gear from like the top brands, the best tent, all this fun stuff, a great rifle system. But when you really narrow it down and tell them the absolute close of that hunt is that right there. When you pull that trigger, will you hit that target? So invest in understanding what dynamics are involved in that, right? Going to the ballistics end of it, kinetic energy. Did you train? Because you spent a lot of money on that. Can you manage the wobble zone? Those types of things. So it boils into that. Make sure you own that sport, because there's a lot of people say, well, I'm not a shooter, I'm a hunter. Well, you're driving a gun, you need to be a shooter too. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and especially I mean, hunters start to shoot farther, and you've mentioned it several times during the conversation here, is an ethical shot, and so like that 22 Creed we built, we can shoot still at 1,200 yards,
Absolutely.
absolutely very accurately. Like we can hit still every time, all day, with that thing. Am I gonna shoot an animal at 1,200 yards cold bore with that rifle?
I would hope not.
Absolutely not, right? And it's not that the rifle, it's not that we can't get that bullet, that projectile into that zone, but there's just so many other dynamics. And you have to always remember that typically it is a cold bore shot. It's a one shot that you get, one opportunity. And there's just, regardless of who you are and what you have, at the end of the day, you are the one pulling the trigger, right?
Yep.
And so you're the one who has to, in that moment, no guide can help you, nobody else can do it for you. It's you're the one who's got to take that shot. So, no, I think that this was super cool getting to talk with you, Don, and
No, I appreciate it.
having these conversations. We're actually gonna be coming out to Don's place in September, I believe, right?
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be a kick.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun, and Don's gonna try to teach a dummy old hunter like me how to shoot for real. And it'll be fun then, and that's kind of what I like to do is how I approach everything, right? Is the why behind it. Why are we doing these certain things? Is there a better way to do it? And honestly, there's so much information out there, and you have to know a little bit to be able to filter that out. And that's where guys like Don and just knowing somebody who does really know their stuff and can help filter that out is super important in this age of information that we live in. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up, and we really appreciate you guys listening to the podcast. Don't forget to follow us on all the socials, and I always remember Megan's not here to give this plug, so I guess I will. We're still doing the Tetra giveaways, and so make sure you guys are following us, liking, subscribing, doing all the things. That way you can get entries into winning some of those giveaways. And also, Don, where are some of the places that they can find and follow you?
Instagram, fritzprecisionshooting.com, Facebook, same way, and then my website is fritzprecisionshooting.com. Got some decent content out there. Love to educate. Try to keep it entertaining and not dry. But feel free to reach out to me. I'm the guy that you can actually talk to if you got questions on gear, whether it's ballistics or guns and cartridges. I'm happy to talk to anyone about this stuff.
Yeah, and he's super knowledgeable, and is what I really like about Don is he's able to talk at all levels. So regardless of if you're a brand new shooter who doesn't know what BC is, what does BC stand for? That's Boone and Crockett, right, Don?
Right? Is that it's in the book, right?
Yeah. So, to like when you start getting into the finer details of ballistics or shooting and all this different stuff, and so I've really enjoyed talking with him. So yeah, reach out for sure, and drop us some comments on the video if you guys have some specific questions that you guys want to cover. I think if Don's up for it, we'll do some more podcasts where we get into a little bit more details about some of the ballistics and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I'd really like to get into some of the things we just kind of touched on, like the why. Like someone's going, what are they talking about and why?
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah, no, basically everything we talked about, there's just like so much more depth to it. We really only skimmed the surface, really,
Yeah.
and almost just brought it up, and in an effort to keep things to where we're shorter and all the stuff for our timeline here. We're trying to we'll do another podcast.
We can be geeks later.
Yeah. And yeah, Don and I, what we need to do, Don, is just record one of our phone conversations.
I know, right? That's so true.
Call it a day. Because yeah, we get into the weeds pretty fast on some of this stuff, and it's a lot of fun. But anyway, I appreciate you, Don. It was really good and fun getting to talk to you.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it, man.